Welcome to the PNRDC, and I'm here to present about the Philippine Dose Registry of Occupationally Exposed Workers, or PHILDOSE, the way forward in a completely relatable, understandable, and not intimidating like a typical academic presentation. I swear, you're gonna watch and learn from this like a vlog. People who work in facilities which use ionizing radiation, like who is she? Nuclear medicine, industrial X-ray, industrial radiography, research and development, among others, are at risk to potential exposures to radiation because of their occupational exposure. Under Philippine regulations and international standards, occupational exposure should be monitored and controlled to ensure the radiation workers' safety and protect them from harmful effects to radiation. So every radiation worker must wear personal monitoring devices or personal dosimeters, and unfortunately this video isn't sponsored, but yeah, radiation workers should wear something like this to measure their total radiation doses. We at PNRI, Radiation Protection Services Section, show some love, is a technical service provider, a TSP, which means we provide dosimetry services to monitor radiation workers here in the Philippines. But we're not the only one, of course, that's the thing. So there are other TSPs in the country and a lot of radiation workers that need to be monitored, which means there's a lot of data all over the place. So there is a need for a centralized National Dose Registry of some sort. Thus, I quote international experts from the IAEA publications. Watch this! National Dose Registry as a central point for the collection and maintenance of dose records, blah blah blah. Y'all can read the rest here. Another one. Blah blah blah, if employers, registrants, and licensees cease to conduct activities in which workers are subject to occupational exposure, arrangements for the retention of workers, records of occupational exposure by the regulatory body or a state registry. Then, in 2019, I got in PNRI. And the PHILDOSE was developed as a web-based system that collects occupational exposure data from TSPs here in the Philippines. We already have papers about the PHILDOSE and what is it for. In fact, the PHILDOSE was presented in the very first PNRDC. So if you guys want to see the PHILDOSE in its development stage, you guys can visit this link to read our paper. We also did some assessment and analysis on occupational exposure of workers and the various industries here in the Philippines. If you guys don't want to read our papers about the PHILDOSE for some reason, in a nutshell, here's what the PHILDOSE is currently doing now. PHILDOSE can generate a worker's occupational exposure history, or OEH, summarizing their recorded radiation doses, even if they transfer to a different company for work. It can produce a facility's annual dose summary, or ADS, summarizing all the radiation workers' exposure data in a year. It can automatically generate a report through the format of UNSCEAR, or the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. How many facilities were monitored? How many radiation workers are in that facility? So it's mainly for the assessment of a country's radiation exposure level and profile.
And one of the most important functions, notify incidents of what we call overexposure, or exposures above regulatory limits. Here in the Philippines, we have these limits for radiation exposure to ensure safety. And once these limits are exceeded, there is something worth investigating.
Since we're a TSP, we evaluate the doses of our customers after processing the returned personal dosimeters so we can read and analyze the doses right away. And once there's an incident of overexposure, we can notify the facility's Radiation Protection Officer, or RPO, and the regulatory bodies right away. Again, this is important because the assessment from the PHILDOSE can be used to aid RPOs, radiation workers, and regulators in optimizing their radiation protection and complying with safety requirements, keeping the doses as low as as reasonably achievable. Let's give a sample scenario.
Hey, good evening. Ano ganap, boss? My name is Christy. I'm from New York, Cubao.
Sorry I called this meeting. This is urgent. Meron bang nangyari? You got 200 millisieverts this month. Ha? Oh my gosh! I'm wearing my coveralls naman. Ano nangyari? You're overexposed. Are you wearing your personal dosimeter?
Ay, ayan. Di siya nagsusuot ng dosimeter.
Eto. Oo, boss. Nilagay ko siya sa source storage room.
Rinig niyo yun? Nilagay ko sa source storage room.
You should always wear your personal dosimeter. Huwag mo siya ilagay sa source storage room. Para na measure niya yung total radiation dose mo sa trabaho.
Ganun yarn?
Naku! Wala bang nagturo sa'yo?
Hala, paano ko na malaman I wasn't trained for this? Hire kayo sa akin, tapos hindi nyo train.
Ay, oo nga pala.
Hindi ka na-train!
But of course, after 3 years of implementation, we noticed gaps, we encountered challenges, we thought of pointers for improvement based from the analysis of the current PHILDOSE data, based from the assessment of the recent RPSS, Occupational Radiation Protection Appraisal Service Mission, and importantly, user experience of the system. Let's dive into these challenges.
It's great that the PNRI developed a National Dose Registry, which is called the PHILDOSE. So what data is uploaded in here?
Although as a TSP, we monitor 1/3 of all radiation workers here in the country, but
So it doesn't represent the whole Philippines yet.
yes, it doesn't represent the whole Philippines yet. Not yet.
So it's not a National Dose Registry. It's a PNRI Dose Registry.
Well, the main purpose is for it to become a national dose registry. That's why we developed the system. It's for the Philippines.
I understand. But there are other TSPs, right? And their data is not yet here in the PHILDOSE.
Yeah, there are other TSPs, not just us.
So you agree? It's not a National Dose Registry.
We did approach other TSPs to upload their data in the PHILDOSE, but I guess it went something like this.
Here's our proposed memorandum of understanding. We're hoping for your full cooperation para sa PHILDOSE. Thank you. La, we don't want to give our data to you. You're a TSP also. That's like conflict of interest. We have our own data from our radiation workers. We should protect their privacy. But this is for the Philippines.
Tama. Ang mundo ay isang malaking kiyapo. Maagawan ka. And that includes our radiation workers' data. Hindi namin bibigay sa inyo. TSP rin kayo.
High volume of radiation workers monitored and lack of resources, especially manpower. Of course, some uncertainties on accuracy of data like reported overexposed, but upon investigation, the person wasn't really exposed, data security, among others. But islands is not yet established here in the Philippines and we don't have the data yet for internal dosimetry.
Ito pa rin gamit ko. Now for the way forward. We don't want these problems and challenges to overcome the system, and we strive for overall improvement of the PHILDOSE. Thus, here are proposed recommendations. Disclaimer. Of course, I recognize I have no authority to impose anything. I represent as a member of a dosimetry TSP, which is the PNRI Radiation Protection Services section. Again, these are recommendations and not orders.
Make it truly a centralized national dose registry. Re-coordinate with the regulatory bodies, the PNRI Nuclear Regulatory Division, and the Food and Drug Administration, Center for Device Regulation, Radiation Health and Research, in contacting other dosimetry TSPs for updating the PHILDOSE with their customer data. Propose to have a signed memorandum of agreement with all written conditions agreed upon by all TSPs. Inclusion of regulatory bodies in handling control of data, like upload of data from TSPs, checking of exposures from radiation workers, may provide a more dynamic and systematic way of retention of records for both TSPs and regulatory bodies. Incorporate in PHILDOSE more specific radiation workers' details, not just the facilities they work for. This can include their type of occupation. Are they a nurse? Are a radiation technologist? A doctor? We can also include their age, their gender, etc. Also, additional feature. The PHILDOSE has to be ready when we incorporate new dosimetry systems. So, reporting of doses received from internal dosimetry, island dosimetry, it can accommodate those.
Now for the main takeaway. The PHILDOSE is a tool in improving the assessment of our country's radiation exposure profiles by determining practices which have higher risks of occupational exposure. It will allow workers in facilities to have access to their own occupational exposure histories so they can improve their radiation protection and safety program. Handling a National Dose Registry, like the PHILDOSE, should be done in a collaborative effort. In the grand scheme of managing the system, inclusion of the regulatory bodies, other technical service providers of dosimetry, our customers, the radiation workers belonging to different facilities, and of course, future stakeholders is recommended. This can lead to faster and better management in terms of data control, data validation, communication, maintenance, tracking, among others. It will aid in strengthening the radiation safety programs to protect the Filipino workers and devise new ways in faster notification of exposure above the regulatory limits nationwide. Hope you guys enjoyed my presentation about the PHILDOSE, the way forward. Don't forget to check out our references here, check out our papers here, like and follow the DOST PNRI Radiation Protection Services section here, and as always, wear your personal dosimeters. Bye!